Have you ever wondered if your constitutional rights apply when you are dealing with a private company or organization, rather than a government entity? Well, typically, the United States Constitution protects you from government overreach, not from actions taken by private individuals or groups. However, there are specific legal frameworks and tests that courts use to determine if a private actor's conduct is so intertwined with the government that it should be considered state action, thus triggering constitutional protections. The primary tests include the Public Function Test, the Nexus or Entanglement Test, and the Symbiotic Relationship Test. The fundamental principle here is known as the State Action Doctrine. This doctrine establishes that most constitutional rights, particularly those found in the 14th Amendment, like due process and equal protection, only apply to actions taken by the state or federal government, not to purely private conduct. The tests developed by the Supreme Court are designed to identify those rare instances where private activity becomes so connected to governmental authority that it is essentially operating as an arm of the state. Let us explore these tests. The Public Function Test applies when a private entity performs functions that have traditionally been the exclusive prerogative of the state, such as running elections or governing a town. If a private actor is carrying out such a role, then their actions may be considered state action. An example of this would be a private company operating a company town that functions exactly like a municipality. The Nexus or Entanglement Test, sometimes called the Closed Nexus Test, looks for significant governmental involvement in the private action. This test asks whether the state has commanded, encouraged, or facilitated the private action to a degree that makes it a joint participant. This could involve direct financial assistance, specific regulations compelling the private action, or active cooperation between the government and the private party. It is not enough for the government merely to regulate a private entity. There must be a closer connection. Finally, the Symbiotic Relationship Test, also known as the Joint Participation Test, focuses on a mutually beneficial relationship between the government and a private entity. The key question is whether the state has so far insinuated itself into a position of interdependence with the private party that it must be recognized as a joint participant in the challenged activity. A classic example of this is a private restaurant operating within a publicly owned building, where the state profits from the private business, and the private business benefits from its location in the public property. Understanding these judicial tests is crucial because they delineate the boundaries of constitutional application. They provide a framework for discerning when individuals can assert their constitutional rights against actions that, on the surface, appear to be purely private. This helps to ensure that entities performing government-like functions or acting with substantial government backing do not circumvent constitutional obligations.